225. The one and only earring ever in the whole wide world. $125. Two, sorry. How much? 225. Any advance on $225? $225. 240. Any advance on $240?
Come on, Dallas.
$250.
We'll have a whip around.
$250.
How much cash you got left, Dallas?
It's only money.
Any advance on $250? Going once, going twice, and sold to Richard.
Alrighty.
You're into your rings, aren't you?
I do. Alrighty, there are actually two more things to auction. I want to ask Sophie, just come back up the front here just for a couple of seconds longer. We have been running, for those of you who've been reading the updates, we had a couple of competitions going whereby people could win seats on Sophie's table at tonight's banquet. Now I see a gentleman up the back there by the name of Andrew Lester who won the one the DWCB gave away for people who joined by a certain date. So we'll be seeing you tonight.
Aha.
Now, there are 3 tickets left. One of these is to be done as a raffle now, and the other 2 I am going to auction. So I will ask Sophie if she would be very kind as to draw a ticket out from here.
Oh, who's it going to be? Somebody with good table manners, I hope. Right, it's on the blue. It's A. Have you got your tickets?
You all got your little tickets, I hope?
And it's number 16. Blue A16.
We got blue 16. We have a winner! There you are.
Yes,
Wonderful. We'll see you again tonight. Now,
I dribbled terribly.
now there are still 2 seats. Okay, we will auction these off now. I will do them one at a time. Who wants to start me with the first one? At say $10. $10? 30? 35? $35 down here. 40? 45? 50? 55? 60, 65? No? 55? Is it 55 here? 60? 65? Please be you two, so you want to go to $70?
70.
No, hang on. Give it 65. If you want to give us $70, that's fine. It's at 65 down the front here. Please be against you, so no one else is going to leap in at this late moment. Dallas, you must have some money left. Damien. Damien again, you seem to have a bit of cash, no?
Dallas is going to spend the evening reading the collected works of Sophie Aldred.
Okay, we're at $65 down the front here.
Doing the annotated version.
Yeah, right.
65 once. $80. Thank you, Ty.
Oh.
$80 up the back there. It seems to be against you. Remember, there is one.
All right. Yeah.
All right, Russell.
Yes. Yeah, okay. Watching those children's shows you were presenting yesterday, and all the acts you were doing, you sort of had like your, I suppose, silly children's show presenter voice, or a high-pitched one there. But I noticed it was almost exactly like Bonnie Langford's normal voice.
Oh, the Melvin and Maureen's, you mean?
Yes, yes.
Oh, well, that was definitely, that was a character. And how astute of you to notice that I actually did base it on Bonnie.
Really?
Yeah. It was funny, the first series we did, that was the second series. We did 2 series of 13 episodes, I think. That one was about, let's see, it must be 6. But it was about 6 or 7 years ago when we did them. And the first series, I remember we went straight into it without really, because I'd been doing something else, I didn't really have time to kind of think about the character.
Enjoyed the previous panel. Thank you to those guys. Moving on, we're now just on 10 o'clock, so look, we're actually running to time again. Basically, look, here's Sophie for her third Q&A.
So, who's just going to start the ball.
Who wants to start the ball rolling?
Anyone got any questions?
You said you had a question, I'm sure.
Someone here. Oh,
Oh, okay.
All right. Yeah.
All right, Russell.
Yes. Yeah, okay. Watching those children's shows you were presenting yesterday, and all the acts you were doing, you sort of had like your, I suppose, silly children's show presenter voice, or a high-pitched one there. But I noticed it was almost exactly like Bonnie Langford's normal voice.
oh, the Melvin and Maureen's, you mean?
Yes, yes.
Oh, well, that was definitely, I mean, that was a character. And how astute of you to notice that I actually did base it on Bonnie.
Really?
Yeah. It was funny, the first series we did, that was the second series. We did 2 series of 13 episodes, I think. That one was about, let's see, it must be 6. But it was about 6 or 7 years ago when we did them. And the first series, I remember we went straight into it without really, because I'd been doing something else, I didn't really have time to kind of think about the character. And it was the costume designer that really came up with, because she got really into it, and she had 2 young daughters, and she'd asked them what she thought Maureen should wear. She explained that Maureen was, Melvin's friend, and they had this shop, and that they were, and this little girl who was about 5 or 6 said to her mother, she should wear a pink dress with spots and very, very high heels. And so that was her kind of idea for the character, that she would wear these outlandish clothes that children would kind of respond to, almost like she rummaged through the dressing up chest and put these mad clothes on. And likewise the character of Melvin as well. And she came up with that idea, and that started me thinking, and I thought, oh right, yes, I see, she's got to be really quite over the top and quite larger than life. And it was great because then the makeup artist, who'd worked on Doctor Who, on a few Doctor Who's actually, so I knew her quite well. She also came up with ideas for these mad hairdos that I had, and I had some strange hats and things. So between them, they made this kind of outlandish character. And as it progressed, I was thinking, who am I like? And this voice started coming out of me, and I was thinking, what's this like? Until one day the director said to me, I think you'd better cut down on the Bonnie Langford just a little bit. I was just getting too much like it. But no, that was the sort of idea of that. And it's great because the programmes became really popular. They were meant to be for preschool children, but as you can imagine, they became sort of cult programs for students and teenagers and adults, of course. And they've been repeated ever since. So in fact, this lot are being repeated at the moment on Monday mornings in Britain, which is great for me because I get the repeat fees. Very nice. But it's incredible, something I did, 6 years ago, again. I can't get rid of it because it's, I don't want to, because I love it, it's great.
Okay, do you want to ask yours now, or do you want to hold off, or do you want to go to the... Okay.
Talking to a friend last night, she was engaged on a dress day.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I said to her, oh, thank you really nice holidays. And she said, I'd like to ask if you know anything about the movie that's going to be.
Oh yes, there's been rumours of a movie for ever such a long time. No, the rumour has it that there will be a movie, and they're thinking of who to cast as the Tracy brothers.
I guess I said it again.
Oh yeah, they say, but they're just thinking of every brother, every sort of set of brothers that they can. The Baldwins also have been mentioned, but I think in the end they're not going to go for a load of brothers. They'll go for people who, well, because let's face it, the Tracy brothers didn't look that similar anyway, did they? The heads of the Tracys were modelled vaguely on the characters who did the voices for them. So Lady Penelope was Sylvia Anderson, Jerry Anderson's ex-wife. You probably know all this. And so the head was modelled to look a bit like her, and Shane Rimmer was Scott Tracy, and that was a bit like him, etc. But that's all I know.
I was just wondering, are there any TV shows that you killed to get a role with?
I'd love to have been Julia Sawala's part and absolutely fabulous. That would have been fantastic. Let's think. What else? Oh, there's loads of stuff that I tend to always look at things and go, oh, I wish I could have done that. You know, I'm sure we all have that kind of thing. Like, oh, that's such a fabulous character. I wish I could have done that. I'd like to have done some period drama, I suppose. Let's think. It would have been fun to be in. I don't know whether you have the Pride and Prejudice. Yeah. And Kate Winslet's roles, of course, I rather like. But then the trouble is they're also much younger than you. But I still covet their roles.
The Ace Jackets.
Yes.
You've got Fantasy Bears on one side. Was that your own one? Or?
Yes, that was my own one. And then we actually, because there's a bit of a story attached to the badges on the jacket, I decided that this is what I should wear, this jacket, because I'd seen some photographs of some girls wearing jackets with badges on in trendy clubs, and it was just beginning this phase after I started wearing it on Doctor Who. It then became very big to have these bomber jackets with the badges on, but at the time there were only a few kids sort of wearing them. And the safety pins as well, that came from the idea of from this magazine I'd seen. And so anyway, I didn't know anything about television, and of course I'd completely forgotten about continuity. So I put these badges on, and thought, great, that would be good. And I chose, there were several. There was that were mine. Well, the Blue Peter badges were mine, and there was a little camel as well. I remember I had, that was mine. And several of them were my actual badges. But the trouble was, we started doing what was it? It was the scene from Remembrance, where the mirror smashes, the little girl, and she's, going apeshit, and the mirror smashes. And it smashed, but it covered me with sort of dust and sort of sugar. It was sugar glass again, and it covered me with bits of that. And so they started wiping the jacket down, and the word came from upstairs, just change the jacket, because of course we had another jacket standing by. So they brought the other jacket out, but of course it didn't have all the badges on. So then the costume department was sort of, sort of desperately putting the badges on. And John Nathan Turner, steam was coming out of his ears as the time was ticking away. So after that, he decreed that I was to put no more of my own badges on, and that we got doubles for all the badges. So I got in touch with the Jerry Anderson fan club, and they willingly gave us another badge, and Blue Peter even gave us some more badges, which is quite good because it was quite hard to get hold of. In fact, when I put my Blue Peter badges on, did you ever have Blue Peter over there? No.
We've seen bits of it. We've seen bits of it on these various Doctor Who things come through.
Oh right, yes. It's basically a magazine show that's been going forever, and it was one of my favourite programmes when I was growing up. It was I aspired to be one of the presenters, Valerie Singleton, who I thought was absolutely the bee's knees when I was about 7. And anyway, I used to write into the programme quite regularly, because if you wrote in an interesting letter or the absolute sort of the sort of nirvana was getting a gold Blue Peter badge, which you did for sort of special services to the country and things like that. It was almost like getting an Olympic medal, But I've always lived in hope, so I was always sending off my ideas and letters and things. And I did get a sort of small collection of Blue Peter badges when I was young. And then when I thought of age, I thought, oh, that's what I could put on my jacket, that would be good. And I appeared in the studio with these Blue Peter badges on, which were both my own badges. And the Blue Peter office rang the floor because they'd been watching on the ring main, it's called. They have this thing in the studio where in the offices at the BBC you can patch into what's happening in any of the studios. So obviously people would sort of like watch around and see what was going on in the studios. and obviously somebody from the Blue Peter office had been watching what was happening in the Doctor Who studio, and they ran down and said, "Excuse me, where did she get those Blue Peter badges?" And somebody came up to me on the floor and said, "Where did you get your Blue Peter badges?" I said, "Well, they're my own. I got them in 1972 or something." And sure enough, they checked. They went back and they checked back in the record. They had it was just before they were about to chuck all their files away and put everything on disc and stuff, and they still had the files all there.
Didn't you lose one of them at one point?
Oh yes, I did. Oh, that was a bit of a story. Yeah, the badges became a complete nightmare for the costume department because, of course, every time I did a stunt or something, they'd all fall off. Because you know what badges are like. You know, they tend to ping off at the time. So they sewed most of them on with nylon, that invisible sort of fishing line thread. They were all sewn into my jacket so that hopefully they wouldn't fall off. And some were kind of stuck down with a glue gun. But there was one particular time in Greatest Show in the Galaxy, and we were in the sand quarry, and I was kind of running around doing something or other, and sure enough, I looked down at one point, and one of my Blue Peter badges had fallen off, and I had no idea where it had fallen. So there was about half an hour of people scrabbling around in the dust and the sand looking for this Blue Peter badge, and they had to make me a cardboard mock-up of the Blue Peter badge, which I wore for a few of the shots. I'm sure you can see it. And then after that, we had to quickly. There weren't factors. So we phoned quickly back to the Blue Peter office and said, quick, we need another Blue Peter badge. But unfortunately, it was just a slightly different colour to the original one that I had. So you can see there's a difference before and after Greatest Show in the Galaxy. One of the badges is a different colour, and that's why.
Yeah. Were there any television roles you were in that you now regret having done?
No, it's really good actually. I've always managed to escape doing anything that I didn't want to do, or I've been lucky enough to have stuff that I've always kind of thought, you know, I've always been proud of what I've done. I mean, it might look mad to you, me jumping up and down and, you know, entertaining children, but I think it's very rewarding. Especially to be able to do educational children's television, which does get watched by a lot of people. There was one thing on my showreel yesterday, Words and Pictures, which was the one with Magic Pencil, and I don't know when did you have Words and Pictures?
Yes.
Yeah, well, it's been going for years and years and years, and I didn't have it at school, but a lot of people I know. Words and Pictures, I remember that, Magic Pencil, and so, yeah, I was really thrilled when I was asked to do a series of it, let's see, I think about 4 years ago. And then last year I was asked to do another series of it, and I thought, you know, what the heck, it's a great programme to be able to be involved in. And it's the flagship programme for BBC Education. And it's watched meticulously because it's shown in the majority of schools in England. It's shown to help with reading and writing, and that's amazing. I mean, to think that I'm helping to educate, and it's great because a lot of friends of mine are teachers and they use Words and Pictures. And when I did the previous series, I went up to see a friend of mine, and she's a teacher, and she said, "Oh, would you mind, please, coming into my school, because the children would love to see you and watch an episode of Words and Pictures with us." And it was great because it was a school that was kind of it wasn't well off at all. It was a state school, and it was in a catchment area of kids who were really pretty underprivileged. And it was so sweet. They sat on the floor, and they kept looking from the television, and they would look at me at the television, and they couldn't work it out at all how I happened to be in two places at once. And it was wonderful because when they watched Magic Pencil, I'd never seen them do this before, and they all held up their hands like this, and they draw in the air, like whatever Magic Pencil's doing. And they were between about, I think they were sort of 5 to 7 year olds, and it was absolutely lovely. And then afterwards they came up, and there was this one little girl, and she had holes in her shoes, and you know, sort of raggedy hair, and she came and she clung onto my leg and she looked up at me and she said, "I love you, Sophie." It was so lovely. Fantastic. And that, I mean, you know, as you can imagine, it's when you get that sort of response, it's not embarrassing at all. So yeah, I've always been really lucky. I always swore I'd never do a game show, and then Space Cadets has proved me wrong.
Well, that's a different one.
But it was different, I thought, because there's a great fashion in England at the moment for well, stand-up comedy is very, very popular, and shows like have you got Whose Line Is It Anyway? Have you seen that?
Yes, the Australian version.
Yeah, and so that sort of started the trend of kind of these game shows with comedians, and then when soccer rather, for you, has become incredibly popular in England ever since Euro '96, when the whole nation became involved in football, and a lot of our comedians became. There's this sort of it's a strange fashion in England at the moment. It's called New Laddism. And men are allowed to be football fans again, and I mean, I'm not quite sure where it's going really, because unfortunately the women are becoming a bit like it as well, and it's a bit trendy again to go out and get drunk, and I don't think it's a very good trait myself. But anyway, football is incredibly popular in England, and there have been a rash of shows which kind of use the comedy element and football. There was a show called Fantasy Football League with a couple of comedians, and basically it was sort of a cult program, and just some stupid comedy really, but very much based around football, and they'd have a load of football supporters sitting there in the studio, and it was a bit like being in a pub, sitting around in a pub, and the conversations that go on there, And then there was another very, very, even more popular show, which was a game show called They Think It's All Over, which is a reference to England's appearance in the World Cup, where the final line was, the commentator said, "They think it's all over," and then England got a final goal, and he said, "It is now." And it's a huge legend in footballing history in England. So this show's called They Think It's All Over, and there's a team of, there's a couple of sports people on each team. There's Gary, do you know Gary Lineker? He played. He's a personality. He was a brilliant footballer, England footballer, very young, and sort of very good looking, so very appealing to women as well. But he's a very intelligent footballer, which is also quite unusual. And he's subsequently become a commentator. But he's one of the captains of this team and comes up with some funny stuff. And then there's the cricketer David Gower, who you probably know. He's the team captain of the other team. And then there are two comedians who are regulars on each side, and then they bring in a guest personality for each team. And it's very funny. They show silly clips of sporting moments, and they show it's about all sports, but with a particular emphasis on football. So that sort of show that became a real big formula, and since then they've tried to do the same thing with other genres. So Space Cadets was a stab at doing it in science fiction, very similar format to They Think It's All Over, and they've had a few more. They had one which is called Never Mind the Buzzcocks, which is about pop music, same formula. So who knows where it will lead. But with Space Cadets, I'm not sure. It went down quite well with the science fiction fans in England, it was nice, I think, because everybody suddenly thought, "Oh, hooray, a show for us at last!" And it was great because actually when I went up to do it in Sylvester, the audience was the word had got around that this series was being made, and there were quite a lot of people in costume in the audience, and I think it freaked out the comedians a bit, but Greg Proops was sort of like, "Oh my God." And but it was great atmosphere. Andrew Beach is the head of the Doctor Who Appreciation Society. He was sitting there in the front row. Yeah, so it may go to second series. I'm not quite sure what how the ratings went. but I think it's a pretty good showing. Yeah.
Sophie, how would the British fans say compared to Australian fans? Is any noticeable difference in their love for you, or you know what I mean? You know what I mean?
Oh, you're so sweet. Your accents are a bit different. No, it's very funny because I think Australian fans and British fans are very, very similar. I mean, you've grown up with a diet of very similar television than we have. I mean, it's really nice to be able to come such a long way and to say, oh, you know Only Fools and Horses, and you'll go, yeah, you know. Whereas the Americans go, oh, you know, of course, because they don't have things like that because the accents are a bit too difficult for them to understand. Yes, I'm always amazed by.
I would have thought it's because they don't understand irony.
Actually, no, to be fair, I'm being very rude about Americans, but the American Doctor Who fans in particular, and, you know, sort of Red Dwarf fans and so forth, they're very good on irony, because if they weren't, they wouldn't like Doctor Who and Red Dwarf, I think. And a lot of them tend to be, a lot of the American fans tend to watch a lot of British TV anyway. They've got their PBS stations which show a lot of British TV, and also they tend to kind of be in touch with British fans who send them stuff. And they've had Monty Python, let's face it, you know, so at least they're semi-educated. But I think that you've grown up with very similar kinds of diet, you know, the goodies, and we were talking about this at my table last night, the goodies and Doctor Who and Monty Python, and, you know, all sorts of things like that. It's very funny coming over here and turning the telly on. I mean, you could almost be in Britain with you know, like watching ABC. It's quite funny, really. No, I don't think there's not much difference at all, really. You're all lovely.
Gosh. What's the most embarrassing question you've ever been asked at one of these conventions? Don't feel obliged to give an answer.
I think it's that one.
Oh gosh, I can't think. There have obviously been many, but I've obviously blanked to them from my head. No, I don't think. People tend not to ask embarrassing questions, actually. Or maybe I'm just I'm not very easily embarrassed, actually. I'm not the embarrassing type. So, I can't think. No. Sorry. No answer for a change.
What did you think of the fake black cat in Survival?
Oh, Sooty. That's what the cat was known as. Cause did you get Sooty in Sweet? Yeah, right. So it was fun. John Nathan Turner dubbed the cat Sooty after the first day because, well, to be fair to the visual effects department, it wasn't their fault because dear old Sooty was meant to be seen in long shot, and that was it. But when we actually came to the filming, because of course, you know, they didn't have the budget for animatronics and what have you, so it was a very crude animatronic cat, you know, with cables coming out of its bum and things, you know, wiggle it around occasionally. But so it was meant to be seen from a very, you know, from far away, and it was only when we actually got to the set and realised that cats are not, you know, as you know, are a law unto themselves, really. We'd hired this cat trainer who said, oh yes, my cats will do things on cue. And of course, as soon as you wanted a cat, they bolted off in the other direction and had to be tempted back with cat food. And then, of course, they'd get bored of eating so much cat food, so they just wouldn't, they'd just sit there licking their paws and looking very cute. And, so Sooty was used in a lot more shots than was originally planned. So that's my get-out clause for the visual effects department. But I mean, it really was a bit ridiculous, poor thing. And yes, I think his nickname says it all, really.
You are,
yeah, that's right. It's a shame, actually, because I like cats. My brother and sister-in-law, they live around the corner from me at home. My sister-in-law is absolutely obsessed with cats. She absolutely loves them. And I've managed to desensitise myself to their cats, you know, and I go around and now at least I don't sort of sit there and with my eyes streaming and my nose running. But I still can't stroke cats or touch them. It's really annoying. I'm sort of trying to work out why. There must be a reason why. Maybe I had a bad experience with a cat as a child, because I'm convinced that everything kind of leads back to thoughts that you have. But I'm very into that sort of thing. Anyway, now I'm allergic to cats. So yes, when I had to hold the cat on the swing, I thought, well, at least I'll hold it for a while, and it won't matter because it'll only be a short shot. But then, of course, things take so long, and I had to grab hold of this poor cat, because it wanted to dash off and do other things. It was had a busy life. It didn't want to be a film star, and so it sort of scratched up my arms, and of course, then it goes all bright red and my arm puffed up and stuff. But it's no big deal, but it's just a bit uncomfortable. So yeah, that's why they use Sooty as well for a few shots.
What about dogs?
Sorry?
What about dogs?
Dogs. Yeah, I'm a bit allergic to dogs as well, which is a real shame. Yeah, it's not fair. The guy I used to go out with his mum had a Dalmatian who was absolutely mad, called Bunter, and I absolutely loved him, but yeah, he made me sneeze as well. My nose run.
Yeah, what do you feel about, what do you think about Ace being a role model for young women fans? We were talking about that last night.
Yeah.
What are your feelings about that?
Yeah, well, I think it's from the feedback I had when I was actually doing it. A lot of sort of teenage girls wrote to me and said, I've never seen anyone on TV that I've been able to relate to before, and that was good, because I thought, well, no, actually, I suppose there hasn't really been, and women are kind of put in categories, I think, on even more so than men, and so it was actually great to be in that position. The character itself was based on real people, and I'm sure that's part of the reason why the character really took hold of people's imaginations, because she was so realistic. And in fact, the two girls who it was based on, it was based on three girls, and Ian Briggs worked in a drama workshop in a place called Ealing in London, and it was a sort of youth theatre workshop, and he would go along there every week and help out. And so he based the character of Ace on these three girls that he knew from the workshop. And two of them actually wrote to me, and they came along to the studio. And it was really weird when I was doing Dragonfire. It was very strange to meet these two people on whom Ace was based. And I thought, when I spoke to him, I thought, I can really see where it had all come from. I think Ian, you see, was very good at giving me a good start, a good characterisation, and a good script in Dragonfire to begin with. For example, that monologue about the, looking up through the gaps and stuff. That was really different, wasn't it, for a companion to have a kind of reflective speech like that halfway through the show. That was actually the audition speech as well, and that was when I remember thinking, I think this is a bit different, to what I remember Doctor Who being like. And I really related very much to the character. So I think that all contributed to the character being quite well-rounded. And therefore I think people were able to kind of, and young guys as well would write to me and say, she's a great character because, at last she's got some guts, and what we've been waiting for, which is really, really nice. As I was saying yesterday, I did slightly worry about her violent streak at times. I hope I wasn't encouraging young people to go out smashing things up with baseball bats and making their own explosives. But I think it was counteracted by the Doctor enough, hopefully.
Yeah.
Yeah, would you say you worked with any great actors like Sylvia Sims or Jean Marsh? Or
Yeah, absolutely. I was so lucky because it was really an amazing job for me. It's funny how, when you go through your life, you don't realise until afterwards, do you, in hindsight, sort of the high points and the low points, and I kind of, I mean, although it was very exciting, I kind of didn't realise just how lucky I was, I think, to suddenly be thrown into this situation where I was working with some of our greatest actors and actresses around. I mean, when you think of that whole list of people that I worked with, it was great. I was quite mindful of it, and I remember just sitting there and watching people like, in particular, Sheila Hancock and, like Dinsdale Landon, and sort of watching their technique and how they worked, because I realised that it was going to be a great learning experience for me. And it was. I mean, it was incredible. And Simon Williams, and I mean, the list goes on and on. And it's lovely because when I see these people now, like Jean Marsh came to a convention last year, and she's just bought a new book out, actually, a new novel, because she's turned into a bit of a writer. She wrote, you probably had The House of Elliot, yeah. And it was great, wasn't it? Oh, that's a role I'd have liked. And funnily enough, somebody because she was sitting next to me in the autograph queue, and we were chatting away. And Louise Lombard's part, I'd have loved that. And it was funny because somebody in the queue said, "Oh, you should have been Louise Lombard's part. You'd have been really good." And Jean actually said, she overheard and she said, "Oh yes, you'd have been much better, darling," she said. I thought, "Ooh, yeah." I saw Louise Lombard once though, and she's so tall. I mean, she's much taller than me. It's incredible, but she does look quite similar. It was really funny. If another friend who was working at the BBC passed her one day, and there was a bit of a double take going on because our hair was quite similar at the time. It's quite funny, like a tall version of me.
Going back to Ace, in the New Adventures, Nancy Rowland or Aldred, I thought you'd written a book. She went when she came back to the movie level and had done. Did you have any input into that, and what did you?
No, I never had any input into the New Adventures. The New Adventures were really the brainchild of Peter Darvel-Evans, who, bless his heart, I think wanted to be a lot more important in Doctor Who fandom than he really is. At one stage, apparently, he held a press conference to introduce the new Doctor to people and rang up John Nathan Turner and said, "Would you like to come to the press conference where I'm introducing the new Doctor?" And John said, "I beg your pardon." No, I mean, Peter he loves Doctor Who, that's the trouble, and but I think he has this kind of idea that he has a huge involvement, and of course he hasn't really. But I think the New Adventures, I mean, they certainly have their place. I've not read that many of them, and I know that there's been a lot of criticism by fans who say that they don't like the character the way she has been sort of adulted up. And I think it's a shame that for children's sake that there isn't a sort of I was actually looking into a series of books for children on Doctor Who last year, and somebody commissioned some research to see whether that would be a go-ahead project, because I'd quite like to have written or edited a series for children. But unfortunately there wasn't enough interest in Britain, because of course children really, although a lot of children are growing up watching the videos and watching it on cable, there isn't that much widespread interest to fulfil that. But I was telling some people the other day, there was a friend of mine who's a journalist, and I can't remember what's happening. It was for the book when I was promoting Ace, and he rang me up and he said, "Oh, I hear you're bringing out this book. Tell me about sort of literary Doctor Who, the books." And I said, well, ever since the series finished, there's been this series of novels called The New Adventures. And he said, "Oh, what are they like?" And I said, well, in them Ace is portrayed as a bit of a gun-toting sex maniac. Anyway, he wrote this little piece about the book and about the New Adventures and stuff, and he put them in I think it was the Times literary column or something like that. And what really made me laugh was that when the sub-editor has to pick out little headlines to put under the captions for the pictures and the headlines, and there was a photograph of me and this piece about Ace, the inside story, and under the photograph the caption read, Sophie Aldred, gun-toting sex lady. But yes, I mean, I've not really read enough of the New Adventures to really comment in general. It's very funny when Sylvester's asked about the New Adventures, because he hasn't even kind of noticed them really. He doesn't know anything about them at all, and people are always asking him about me. He never knows what they're on about.
No.
No, okay.
Hey, just back to comment on what you're saying about apes. What I liked about it, because I was actually 16 at the time, and yeah, so like I couldn't really relate to it. What I liked was speaking of my age now. What I liked about it was the fact that even though there was some like really gutsy and tough, she was also very vulnerable, and also like there's a scene in Remembrance where the little girl sort of like crying and sort of running away, thinking, oh, I've escaped. She sort of picked her up and gave her a hug and everything. And like there are a lot of companions that I couldn't have seen doing that.
Yeah.
And it just showed that she was a real person, like that she was a real human, compassionate side to her. And I think like what I didn't like about sort of more the base of New Adventures days is I think she lost to that compassion. Like,
Yeah.
'cause I don't think Ace would find around some human feeling. That wasn't the Ace that I sort of thought I knew.
No, I agree actually. I think that was, for me certainly, the wonderful thing about playing Ace was her relative complexity, and that she was very different to a normal. It was much more like a sort of a drama role, because she was a fully rounded character, and also her relationship with the Doctor, which I really thought was great as well, because it was a real relationship that you could kind of, it was a sort of father-daughter type relationship, or uncle-niece sort of relationship, really. And for me as an actress, it obviously gave me a lot to do, because it meant that I could get my teeth into some sort of meaty acting stuff, which was great. And yes, like the bit in Remembrance, that was very well written and very well thought out there.
Yeah, with Survival, when the character of Ace starts to change on the planet, you got to sort of play a slightly skewed version of Ace for a fair while after that, within the story itself. And how did you actually approach that?
It's funny, it's really weird, but at the time I never really thought about what I was doing. I kind of, and I think I do this. I kind of do things by instinct more than anything really. I was thinking about this last night, and I approach a role through instinct rather than any great background or any real kind of worrying about it. And I tend to start off with the script as it is, and with the character as it is in that story. And then I kind of I can't remember having done any kind of real background work on it. I can't remember having kind of thought about it really. I think it was just something I did, and I suppose I would have thought, oh right, well this is how Ace would be feeling now, or this is what she'd be going through. So I think that's how I do it really. That's my method. It's not really any great, I don't think anybody could follow it or anything like that.
With Doctor Who in your era becoming less of the Tom Baker show and going to the Sly and Sophie show, and seeing as Sylvester McCoy's Doctor was coming over all mysterious throughout the last few seasons, was there ever any plan any long-term plan to develop your character?
Yeah, I think she was going to progress much as she was. Certainly Sylvester's Doctor character was going to progress and become more mysterious, and all this Hand of Omega stuff, and the 3-in-1, and I think I remember having a chat with Andrew Cartmel during it was during Remembrance, that's right, and when we were talking about the Hand of Omega, stuff like that. And Sylvester was going, what on earth does this all mean? You know, what is this all about? And so we had a chat, and he was explaining that Andrew wanted to take the character to be more mysterious, and that there were secrets about the Doctor that nobody knew, and all this sort of thing. And I remember Sylvester sitting there and thinking, I still don't understand, but I'll just say the lines. So I think the concentration in the future would have been more on the Doctor and the development of the Doctor, because I think for every story, Ace was being kind of going through the ringer anyway, and there was that kind of whole the thing about the house and the Doctor taking her back to confront her fears and all that sort of thing. I often wonder how far it could have gone, you know, because there's only so much you can do with a character, I think. And I think it would have been a good idea for me to leave halfway through the following season, because I think people could have got a bit bored with Ace and her neuroses, you know. We've had to make up a lot more sort of problems that Ace had. But yes, I don't know if there were any particular plans other than the stuff which Mark Platt has written about in Lungbarrow, the sort of idea of taking her off to Gallifrey and teaching her a thing or two.
I've actually got one myself. Silver Nemesis, up on the gantries there, I'm not thinking you're scared of heights, aren't you?
Yeah. The Silver Nemesis episode was quite interesting because I'm not too keen on heights. It depends though. I mean, it was funny, I was just saying the other day that when we climbed Ayers Rock, nobody gave us the warning chat about it being quite steep and high. And the first kind of, 100 metres is very steep. And it's kind of quite a good test, because if you can get over that, then you can probably get up to the top. But I remember as I started climbing, I was thinking, am I going to be really scared on the way down? And in fact, I wasn't at all, even though it's like quite sheer, and I saw a lot of people around me actually being quite scared, but I wasn't at all. So it's really funny. It must depend on my mood or something. Because like I can look off a tall building. I don't like that. Looking straight down. So when this Silver Nemesis thing came up, Chris Clough said to me, the director said to me, are you okay with heights? And I said, well, not really, but as long as it's not too high. He said, oh, it's only about as high as this ceiling, and it was about double the height of this ceiling. And I thought, well, that's all right, you know, that'll be okay. When we actually got to the location, it was this massive, it was an old gasworks, I think, and there was this huge hangar like this, shaped like this. And I went and had a look, and I thought, well, I wonder where the gantry is. And there was this, right up in the ceiling, there was this tiny sort of rusty-looking thing that was going from one end to the other. And I thought, well, that can't be it, you know, because it's so rusty and old-looking. They'll probably swing something from one end of the hangar to the other, and it'll be like a set. So every now and again, I kept popping in and thinking, when's the gantry coming up, going up? You know, when's that going to be built? And it didn't happen, and it didn't happen. And then we came up to the gantry scenes, and the production manager said, right, okay, everybody up to the gantry. And I'm like, that is the gantry. Okay. And there were these crumbly old steps all the way up to it. Went round and round and round and round, and we got to the top. And it really was very high. As you can see from the shots with the Steadicam of the TARDIS below, you can sort of get an idea of how high it was. Plus the fact that it was very old and rusty, and also it was that sort of like it wasn't a solid platform. It was see-through. You know, it was like that chicken wire type stuff. So you could see right through it. And as if that wasn't enough, only one side of it was closed in. I think you can see on the tape. The other side had like posts every sort of 4 or 5 feet. And so, of course, when I had to duck down like this, I sort of looked to my side and there was absolutely nothing there between me and the ground. But it was very strange, because I don't know whether the character of Ace takes over or something in that situation, because I do find that when I'm working, I do things which I would normally probably not do. You know, maybe it's adrenaline, or maybe it's just concentrating on the work. But I wasn't at all scared. It was amazing, really amazing. We were up there for quite some time because there were a lot of sort of reverse shots to do, and we had the cameraman with a steady cam. Now he was jumping around all over the place. I was a bit scared for him. And the Cybermen, of course, who couldn't see anything because they had their masks on, so they had sort of tunnel vision, and they had to be a bit careful about not stepping out over the edge. I thought it was a real shame in Silver Nemesis that when the Cyberman falls off the gantry, and you can see that it's just a sort of stuffed costume falling to the ground. Not that it would have been great if they threw a real one. It's a shame they couldn't have got their stuntman to just do, you know, the fall through camera. It would have looked much better. But there you go.
Fair enough.
I was going to ask you also about, I remember reading an interview that you've done, you've involved with flying stuff on a show called Corners, and you described that as being more scary than the actual orders.
Yeah, much scarier. Yes, it was, when I was lucky enough, when I got Doctor Who, to at the same time have got on this programme called Corners, which was answering children's questions about anything and everything. And this particular stunt in question was, it wasn't even a stunt really, it was a simple flying manoeuvre, which is usually very simple. And the idea was that we were talking about migration patterns, and somebody had written in to say, why do birds fly south? Well, they don't here, do they? Why do birds fly south in the winter? And of course in England they fly south because it's so damn cold. They want to go and get some warmth. So we were doing this thing to explain migration, and we were doing it in a sketch form. And we were dressed as two little birds. And Simon, my co-presenter, I had my costume put on first, and then he was being made up. And I can't remember which bird I was dressed as in particular, but it was a sort of fluffy suit, which was very unwieldy. And I had a beak on like this, so I couldn't really see too clearly. And I had things in my hands as well, because I think I had a little suitcase and an umbrella, I seem to remember. So I was hauled up to the grid in the studio ceiling, and we were coming down. It was all against blue screen, you know, so we had some boxes that we were going to be flown down onto, and then afterwards they would caption on a telegraph wire like this, and it would look like we'd just landed on the telegraph wire. It was really very effective. And so I was hauled up like this, and I'd never flown before. I'd had a safety harness on in Doctor Who, which Bonnie reminded me of actually. And it was attached to both shoulders, and it was like, oh, it's so uncomfortable. It was like having two car seat belts in between your legs, and it was all sort of, it was horrible actually. But anyway, I was hauled up, and one side of it was taut, and the other side of it kind of started bunching up, and I thought, oh, well, that's obviously just the safety wire, you know, and if I fall, it'll kind of twang, you know, and catch me. What I didn't realise was that they were both meant to be straight, so I didn't say anything about it. And the guy who was doing the flying was this great big fat bloke called Eric Dunning, who couldn't really give a damn about what he was doing. And I think he kind of thought that he'd had such a lot of experience and this was such a simple job. And what you're meant to do is you're meant to look at the artist with whom you're working, and you're also meant to look at a monitor which has a close-up picture on, so you can make sure everything's right. Well, we found out afterwards that he was doing neither. You know, he was just kind of hauling me up like this. He hauled me up, and then he started lowering me down. And I just felt this kind of gripping around my neck. And I remember thinking, oh, that's not right. And I shouted, stop, at the top of my voice. And apparently, I didn't hear, but apparently he just shouted at, he said, no, it's all right, carry on, she'll be okay. Carried on lowering me down. Because I suppose he thought I was just a prima donna actress who, you know, there was something wrong. In any case, somebody, in that situation, if somebody says stop, you should stop. But, you know, he wasn't thinking. And it was the assistant floor manager who saw what was going on. I mean, the whole studio suddenly was like, again, mouths open, you know. And And she ran across to him, grabbed the rope out of his hand and held me there while they went to get a stepladder to get me off this, to get me out of this situation. And by this time I was dangling from the studio grid. And somehow the wire had got round my, well, it had fallen in loops around my neck, you see, while we were going up, which of course I couldn't see because I had this beak on and everything. And it gradually, as I was slowing down, it was tightening around my neck. And then when, finally, it was my teeth that saved me actually, luckily I've got strong teeth, one of the loops of wire actually kind of pinged up, and it was like I was being held like by my teeth from the studio ceiling. So they kind of got me down from this. And still, I see cameramen sometimes who were working on that, and they say, it's so lucky that he was lowering you slowly, because if he'd been going fast, then I'd probably have just got garroted, with this wire. But I mean, he's crazy, this man. And then we had to carry on, using him this day, because, we had to do this scene. And I decided, I burst into tears, and I was in a bit of a state of shock, and I decided I didn't want to do any more flying that day. So in the end, I was standing on the block already there, and Simon came and flew in next to me, crossing his fingers that nothing would go wrong. And they were flying Simon in, and this guy, they have these big leather gloves that they have so that they can handle the wire. And one of the guys was up in the grid, walking around sort of checking something, and he said, "Oi, can I have the gloves?" And this guy, without looking to see, he just tried to throw one of the gloves, these big heavy gloves, up into the grid to this other guy. And of course it didn't get up there, and it landed on somebody's head on the studio floor. I mean, I don't know what he was doing. He really was. Anyway, there was a big inquiry about it, and he obviously didn't work again for the BBC, nor for anyone else, I hope. And then it was quite funny, because when we were doing Greatest Show in the Galaxy, in the tent, in the car park, Sylvester had to have a safety harness for doing, the stuff that he was doing at the end of all the tricks and things like that. Well, he had to be in a safety harness for that. And they hired a company called Kirby's, who are quite a reputable flying company. And I remember I was sitting, I had quite a lot of time, because this took ages, this stuff with Sylvester to do. And I was sitting outside, chatting to these guys. And I kind of wanted to sound them out about Eric Dunning and what they knew about him. And so I said, "Oh, I've done some flying," I said, and I didn't tell them about it. I said, "We used a guy called Eric Dunning," and they went, "Oh my God, not Eric Dunning." And I said, "Oh really, why? What do you..." They said, "Oh well, he used to work for us, and then we gave him the sack because he was so hopeless. But he said, then he was a lot cheaper. He undercut everybody else's prices. So the BBC tended to use him because he was cheaper than everyone else."
Oh, God.
And they said, "Oh, there's this story going around that this girl was doing a programme and she nearly got hung by her neck because he was..." And I said, "Boy, I can tell you that..." They said, "Oh, but that can't be true, because nobody would ever do..." I said, "Well, it was true, because that was me." And they couldn't believe it, that he'd done this. So there you go. I was talking to Bonnie about it recently, actually, because we were reminiscing about it, and she reminded me that we'd had a safety harness in Dragonfire. And I remember that Bonnie had been really like, "Oh great, safety harnesses, that's great," because she'd just been in Peter Pan for all this long time, and she'd had a fantastic company that had flown her. I can't remember what the company, I think. And so she said she remembered putting this safety harness on for Dragonfire and thinking, "Oh my God, you needed to have nappies put in to cushion you for this stuff." And she said, "This is just hopeless." She said, "This is so old, this equipment." Because apparently now there's no problem with flying harnesses and things. It's very easy. You just put on this thing, which is a bit like a kind of body suit, and all the wires are attached to it. And Bonnie had been, happy as Larry, swinging about doing Peter Pan for a year or whatever it was. But no, so that was not pleasant. Not at all.
it's the last one.
Okay. Since we're on the subject of Sophie in danger, did you have any problems with any of the pyrotechnics and things like that on the show? Any close calls?
There was just again, the visual effects departments are fantastic at the BBC. I became really fascinated because I didn't realise before I did Doctor Who that such a department existed. You know, I thought, wow, I wish I'd known about this when I was younger, making models and then blowing them up. Because I used to do that with those airfix, you know, aeroplanes. You know, you always made the aeroplanes, then you kind of soaked a tissue with methylated spirits or whatever, set light to it and blew that. I was always doing that. And for some reason, the guys in the visual effects department are really great guys. I got on very well with them. I mean, Mike Tucker is the case in point, who I wrote Ace with, and there's a guy called Paul McGuinness who worked on a lot of the shows, and they're all half mad as well, I hasten to add. But I used to hang around with them quite a lot, and they were great fun to be with. But also, in a work situation, they are incredibly safe as well. They have very strict guidelines which they have to work to, which are actually getting more and more strict as time goes by, which is great. You know, it's very good. You know, they hand round ear defenders if there are going to be any big explosions, and they have to make sure that everybody's at a certain distance, and the production manager has to give a big talk to the whole of the cast and crew before any kind of stunt happens, anything like that. But the only thing in the whole of the 2 and a bit years was when we were doing Silver Nemesis, and there was a scene where I'm running down some spiral stairs, and the Cybermen are meant to be firing shots at me. There were some pyrotechnics which were on the ground, little flash pots, and I had to run by them, and they would let the flash pots off. And I can't really remember now, but something went a little bit wrong with that, and they got the timing wrong, and they set them off a bit too close for comfort. And there was a big row there with the production manager because you know, it was just timing. The cues were wrong, and they'd set the stuff off, and it was kind of, it could have kind of burnt my leg, but nothing else really. So they were, you know, they were always great and very concerned with safety. In fact, that Silver Nemesis, they had those great explosions too. You know, the mothership, the Cybermen's ship. What they did was they dug a huge pit in the grounds of Arundel Castle where we were filming, and they filled it with drums of petrol, I think, and all sorts of rubbish. And we had to stand so far back from this explosion. When they set it off, it was unbelievable. It was a massive explosion. And the cloud was amazing. It kind of mushroomed up. It looked like a kind of, you know, nuclear a thing had gone off. And apparently the residents of Arundel were ringing up the police and saying, "Oh my God, what's happening?" Because there was this massive bang, you know, and then this big mushroom cloud. So that was incredible. I think everybody enjoyed watching the explosions. It was quite funny because they're pretty spectacular. There was another one in Survival as well, which if you've seen the Ace book, you'll know that it was amazing. It blew a smoke ring. It was incredible. There was this great big ring of smoke which floated up over London. It was amazing.
Fair enough. All right. What we might do, we've just gone past 11 o'clock. We might actually set up now just for a quick round of autographing. If you're right for that.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, just while we're setting up, I've actually got the clip which we were going to play at yesterday's opening ceremony and tape, unfortunately.
You're from there? Used to be. Whereabouts on earth?
Marivale.
Sounds nice.
You ever been there? I was doing this brilliant experiment to extract nitroglycerin from gelignite. I think something must have gone wrong. This Timestorm blows up from nowhere, whisks me up here.
And when was this?
Does it matter?
Well, don't you ever want to go back?
Not particularly.
What about your mum and dad?
I've got no mum and dad. I've never had no mum and dad, and I don't want no mum and dad. It's just me, all right?
Sorry.
I might yet have a use for you.
Oh, yeah? What makes you think I'd be interested?
Oh, I can be very persuasive.
I'm not frightened of you.
Good. Because I shall need people like you in my army of mercenaries.
You what?
Think about it. Travelling through the 12 galaxies. The diamond sparkle of meteorite showers.
Oh look, there's the earring of that man.
Think about it.
Don't listen to it, eh?
How old are you?
18.
18, eh? No home to call your own. The 12 galaxies are your home. Come with me. I understand you.
He won't realize that, eh? Don't believe him!
Join me. Take my golden sovereign. Take the sovereign.
Don't do it, Ace! Please, don't do it!
You've heard altogether too much. Freeze her!
No, Ace!
Take the coin. Take the coin.
So this is what happened next.
Take the money.
Cool, wasn't my hair long? Yeah, that's... Pardon?
It was a bit redder.
I think that's just the lights, yeah. Yeah, my hair used to be a lot fairer actually, but it seems to get dark, and then with the sun it gets fairier. The scene with Kane there was the very first scene that I ever did. That was my very, very first piece of television ever. So it was quite good that I had to look a bit scared, because I was. But that was one, you know, I was telling you about how people, yesterday I was telling you about how people help each other out. I'll sit up here again so you can see. Sort of the word gets around about what to do, where. Well, that was a case in point because Eddie Peel, who was playing Kane, we were looking at the camera, and in the camera rehearsals, he was just giving me really good tips. And he said, look, the camera's over there. He said, just turn slightly to your left, because then the camera will pick up more of your face than a direct profile, because a complete profile isn't that good. You know, so just, and he said, look at me with, because the camera was here. He said, when you're looking at me, look at me with this eye. You know, you can either that one or that one, because then he said your other eye will be nearer, further round to the camera, and it'll just angle your face around a bit. It's all clever stuff, isn't it? You wouldn't think so much went into it. Yeah, and the first scene with Bonnie, the one where I'm changing out of the waitress outfit, I remember that took ages to rehearse, because we had to time it exactly. Me taking the stuff off and putting the jacket on. And I think any actor will tell you that that's probably one of the worst things to do, is to do a lot of business while you're delivering lines. Because you're concentrating on, you know, all the time, you're not really thinking about the acting, you're thinking, oh no, by that line I've got to put my arm in here and I've got to get that line. And we did that several times as well, because I kept missing getting my arm in the jacket, you know. And so yeah, that was all very much a learning experience. I also had a splitting headache by that time. I remember that was the same day, I think, that we then went on to film, you know, where Bonnie and I see the dragon for the first time, where it comes around the corner. And I had this headache, and Bonnie turned to me and she said, "Sorry about this, Soph." And she just opened her mouth. She just went, one of her piercing screams, and you can see actually, if you watch the tape, you can see my forehead kind of creases in pain as it wasn't anything to do with acting, it was just like I had this headache and her scream went piercing through my head. And then Gary, who was floor manager at the time, said, you know, they said cut, and I thought, oh, thank goodness I can go and have an aspirin. And he said, oh dear, I'm afraid we're going to have to do that again. And Bonnie and I just looked at each other. No. She didn't enjoy screaming that much, I must tell you. You might have heard her story about when she was rehearsing. I can't remember which story it was for now, but there was a scream that happened right at the end of the episode. There's probably a lot of them. Anyway, her note after at rehearsals, which she thought was just the most hilarious thing she'd ever heard, was, Bonnie, that was fine, but could you scream in the key of E, please? I think it was E or F, because then they could go from her scream straight into the closing. Isn't that great? I wish I could. She can't remember which story it is though, so you have to. Oh, was that the one? Oh, were they the ones that she said that they laughed at because they looked very rude?
Yes.
They just had hysterics, yeah, all the time at these verbals. Right, okay, on with the clips.
A Dalek. The trouble is, it's on the Dalek.
With the right one, you're better than the worst.
Yes. Joke.
No thanks.
What do you think you're doing? Borrowing your van.
These Daleks.
Daleks.
Oh, Daleks. Where are they from?
From Skaro, at least originally. They're the mutated remains of a species called the Khalids, left here.
When were they left here?
No, turn left here.
Oh, right.
No, left. You missed the turning.
What? Turn where?
Why don't you concentrate on where you're going?
Look, I'm doing the best I can. If you don't like it, you drive.
Small human female sighted on level 3.
What are you calling small?
There's lots to talk about there. The first clip that you saw there, in trying to get the car started, that was all fine, and that was the real noise. It was this wonderful old Bedford van. It was a real 1960s little van, and to my great disappointment, I wasn't allowed to drive it though. It was a real shame. So that because we didn't have insurance, not for that day. So I kind of, pretended to drive off, and then the actual hitting the barrel was, I really wanted to do it, but they wouldn't let me do it. Tipping the stuntman, he put on my jacket just in case you could see any of him as he's driving, and he actually did the banging into the barrel. It's such a shame to see poor old Dursley there. It's very sad. And then the next clip that you saw was when we're driving along. And the whole scene, if you look again closely, the whole of that scene is dubbed. We had to actually go back into a sound studio afterwards and re-record the dialogue, because the trouble was that there was in the back of the van there was John Nathan Turner, the sound man, cameraman, and then the van made such a lot of noise that the poor sound man, and they were being bumped up and down like this. So of course, the sound didn't come out very well, and we had to go back into, and it was a really hard sequence to redub, because there was a lot of information there. But I think we did quite well, don't you? We kind of matched the lip sync quite well. What else can I tell you about that scene? Oh yeah, of course, that was even more of a nightmare, because we had, don't know if you've seen, when they do those interior of car shots like that, you have a camera on a special mount, by the wing mirror, and we on either side, we do the shot, and then we change it round. Now, it was fine when I was driving. I'm quite a good driver, and that was all fine, and I managed to do the dialogue, which again is quite hard to do. That was a road, a residential road. There were other cars driving up and down there and things like that. It was quite a quiet road because we didn't want any cars passing, because of course it would be the wrong period. So we actually had to wait till. But it was quite a long stretch of road because we had quite a lot of dialogue. And it's difficult to concentrate on driving and where the camera is and acting and doing the dialogue as well. And it was quite a sort of rapid exchange as well, and the comedy and everything of the moment. So that was quite hard. But what was even more hard and even more terrifying was that Sylvester usually wears glasses, and he doesn't wear contact lenses. So I omitted to say that for most of this filming, we'd do the rehearsal, the camera rehearsals, he'd have his glasses on, and then for the take, he would just take his glasses off. Sometimes he forgot to take them off, and we had to do retakes because he had his glasses on. But so, of course, he put his glasses in his pocket, and then, of course, he was nearly blind. So a lot of the time, when he's walking somewhere, or he can't actually see. So driving was a bit of a problem. And he said to me, people hadn't really kind of realised exactly how little he could see, and he just leant over to me just before we set off on this journey with, you know, a couple of £1,000 worth of camera equipment mounted on the side of the van, and he leant over and he said, if we get too near any lampposts, just nudge me like this, and I'll turn to the right a bit. So we set off, and you can probably see I've probably got my teeth clenched for the next bit. But I remember we had to do that quite a few times, that stretch of driving, because it was quite difficult to... So by the end of it, we were all terrified, and by this time the crew in the back had realised that he couldn't see either, so they were all praying in the back like this. But, and John Nathan Turner actually directed us in that bit, because again we were so far behind schedule that Ken True, the director, had to go and set up the next sequence of shots at a cemetery, because we went immediately on to record the closing sequences at the cemetery. And so I remember that John took over, and that was the second unit, lot of camera there. So there you go.
Here we go. Okay.
Can't play an instrument, dance, sing.
Oh, I remember that.
Okay, we have 2 clips here.
How do you expect to pass your chemistry A-level if you can't even store the equipment properly? A-level? You're from Earth?
Used to be.
Whereabouts on Earth?
Perivale.
Sounds nice.
You ever been there? I was doing this brilliant experiment to extract nitroglycerin from gelignite. I think something must have gone wrong. This Timestorm blows up from nowhere, whisks me up here.
And when was this?
Does it matter?
Well, don't you ever want to go back?
Not particularly.
What about your mum and dad?
I've got no mum and dad. I've never had no mum and dad, and I don't want no mum and dad. It's just me, all right?
Sorry.
I might yet have a use for you.
Oh, yeah? What makes you think I'd be interested?
Oh, I can be very persuasive.
I'm not frightened of you.
Good. Because I shall need people like you in my army of mercenaries.
You what?
Think about it. Travelling through the 12 galaxies. The diamond sparkle of meteorite showers.
Oh look, there's the earring of Batman.
Think about it.
Do you listen to an ace?
How old are you?
18.
18, eh? No home to call your own. The 12 galaxies are your home. Come with me. I understand you.
He won't realise that, Ace. Don't believe him.
Join me. Take my golden sovereign. Take the sovereign.
Don't do it, Ace. Please, don't do it.
You've heard altogether too much. Freeze her.
Ace.
Take the coin. Take the coin.
So this is what happened next.
Take the money.
Cool, wasn't my hair long? Yeah, that's... Pardon? I think that's just the lights, yeah. Yeah, my hair used to be a lot fairer actually, but it seems to get dark, and then it's, with the sun it gets fairer again. The scene with Kane there was the very first scene that I ever did. That was my very, very first piece of television ever. So it was quite good that I had to look a bit scared, because I was. But that was one, you know, I was telling you about how people, yesterday I was telling you about how people help each other out I'll sit up here again too. Sort of the word gets around about what to do where. Well, that was a case in point because Eddie Peel, who was playing Kane, we were looking at the camera, and in the camera rehearsals, he was just giving me really good tips. And he said, look, the camera's over there. He said, just turn slightly to your left, because then the camera will pick up more of your face than a direct profile, because a complete profile isn't that good. You know, so just, and he said, look at me with you, because the camera was here. He said, when you're looking at me, look at me with this eye. You know, you can either that one or that one, because then he said your other eye will be nearer, further round to the camera, and it'll just angle your face around a bit. It's all clever stuff, isn't it? You wouldn't think so much went into it. Yeah, and the first scene with Bonnie, the one where I'm changing out of the waitress outfit, I remember that took ages to rehearse, because we had to time it exactly, me taking the stuff off and putting the jacket on. And I think any actor will tell you that that's probably one of the worst things to do, is to do a lot of business while you're delivering lines, because you're concentrating on, you know, all the time. You're not really thinking about the acting. You're thinking, oh no, by that line I've got to put my arm in here, and I've got to get that line. And we did that several times as well, because I kept missing getting my arm in the jacket, you know. And so yeah, that was all very much a learning experience. I also had a splitting headache by that time. I remember that was the same day, I think, that we then went on to film, you know, where Bonnie and I see the dragon for the first time, where it comes around the corner. And I had this headache, and Bonnie turned to me and she said, "Sorry about this, Soph." And she just opened her mouth. She just went, one of her piercing screams. And you can see, actually, if you watch the tape, you can see my forehead kind of creases in pain. It wasn't anything to do with acting, it was just like I had this headache, and her scream went piercing through my head. And then Gary, who was floor manager at the time, said, you know, they said cut, and I thought, oh, thank goodness, I can go and have an aspirin. And he said, oh dear, I'm afraid we're going to have to do that again. And Bonnie and I just looked at each other. No. She didn't enjoy screaming that much, I must tell you. You might have heard her story about when she was rehearsing. I can't remember which story it was for now, but there was a scream that happened right at the end of the episode. There's probably a lot of them. Anyway, her note at rehearsals, which she thought was just the most hilarious thing she'd ever heard, was, "Bonnie, that was fine, but could you scream in the key of E, please?" I think it was E or F, because then they could go from her scream straight into the closing. Isn't that great? I wish I could. She can't remember which story it is though, so you have to. Oh, was that the one? Oh, were they the ones that she said that they laughed at because they looked very rude?
Yes.
They just had hysterics, yeah, all the time at these verbals. Right, okay, on with the clips.
A Dalek. The trouble is, it's on the Dalek.
Would the right one be better than the worst?
Yes. Joke.
No thanks.
What are you doing? Borrowing your van.
These Daleks.
Daleks.
Oh, Daleks. Where are they from?
Skaro, at least originally. They're the mutated remains of a species called the Calids, left here.
When were they left here?
No, turn left here.
Oh, right.
No, left. You missed the turning.
What? Turn where?
Why don't you concentrate on where you're going?
Look, I'm doing the best I can. If you don't like it, you drive.
Small human female sighted on level 3.
I'm calling small.
Reinforcements requested.
Oh, there's lots to talk about there. the first clip that you saw there, in trying to get the car started, that was all fine, and that was the real noise. It was this wonderful old Bedford van. It was a real 1960s little van, and to my great disappointment, I wasn't allowed to drive it though. It was a real shame. So because we didn't have insurance, not for that day. So I kind of, pretended to drive off, and then the actual hitting the barrel was, I really wanted to do it, but they wouldn't let me do it. Tipping the stuntman, he put on my jacket just in case you could see any of him as he's driving, and he actually did the banging into the barrel. It's such a shame to see poor old Dursley there. It's very sad. And then the next clip that you saw was when we're driving along, and the whole scene, if you look again closely, the whole of that scene is dubbed. We had to actually go back into a sound studio afterwards and re-record the dialogue, because the trouble was that there was in the back of the van there was John Nathan Turner, the sound man, cameraman, and then the van made such a lot of noise that the poor sound man, and they were being bumped up and down like this. So of course, the sound didn't come out very well, and we had to go back into. And it was a really hard sequence to redub, because there was a lot of information there. But I think we did quite well, don't you? We kind of matched the lip sync quite well. What else can I tell you about that scene? Oh yeah, of course, that was even more of a nightmare, because we had, don't know if you've seen, when they do those interior of car shots like that, you have a camera on a special mount, by the wing mirror. And we did, on either side, we do the shot, and then we'd change it round. Now, it was fine when I was driving. I'm quite a good driver, and that was all fine, and I managed to do the dialogue, which again is quite hard to do. That was a road, a residential road. There were other cars driving up and down there and things like that. It was quite a quiet road because we didn't want any cars passing, because of course it would be the wrong period. So we actually had to wait till. But it was quite a long stretch of road because we had quite a lot of dialogue. And it's difficult to concentrate on driving and where the camera is and acting and doing the dialogue as well. And it was quite a sort of rapid exchange as well, and the comedy and everything of the moment. So that was quite hard. But what was even more hard and even more terrifying was that Sylvester usually wears glasses, and he doesn't wear contact lenses. So I omitted to say that for most of this filming, we'd do the camera rehearsals, he'd have his glasses on, and then for the take, he would just take his glasses off. Sometimes he forgot to take them off, and we had to do retakes because he had his glasses on. But so, of course, he'd put his glasses in his pocket, and then, of course, he was nearly blind. So a lot of the time, when he's walking somewhere, he can't actually see. So driving was a bit of a problem. And he said to me, people hadn't really kind of realised exactly how little he could see, and he just leant over to me just before we set off on this journey with a couple of £1,000 worth of camera equipment mounted on the side of the van, and he leant over and he said, if we get too near any lampposts, just nudge me like this, and I'll turn to the right a bit. So we set off, and you can probably see I've probably got my teeth clenched for the next bit. But I remember we had to do that quite a few times, that stretch of driving, because it was quite difficult to. So by the end of it, we were all terrified, and by this time the crew in the back had realised that he couldn't see either. So they were all praying in the back like this. But and John Nathan Turner actually directed us in that bit, because again we were so far behind schedule that Ken True, the director, had to go and set up the next sequence of shots at a cemetery, because we went immediately on to record the closing sequences at the cemetery. And so I remember that John took over, and that was the second unit, lot of camera there. So there you go.
Here we go. Okay.
Can't play an instrument, dance, sing. No, but there is something you might be very good at.
You're playing a dangerous game, Candyman. That red hot poker comes to you like a knife through butterscotch. Never enough to your logic, which leaves me only one alternative.
Finish! Open your door!
No.
Gosh, I completely forgotten that scene. How interesting. The first clip, banished it to the back of my mind, obviously. Leslie Dunlop and I, Leslie played, is it Susan Q? Susan Q, yeah. She and I became great friends, and in fact we're still in touch with each other. She's a very well-known actress in England. Did you get from May to over here? And she's been in absolutely masses of stuff. She was in Roman Polanski's Tess and all sorts of things. And she and I just hit it off like a house on fire. Hit it off like a house on fire. With a mixed metaphor, there you go. So in fact I remember rehearsals in particular for the Happiness Patrol were hilarious because Leslie and I would be giggling in the corner, and we all three of us, Sylvester and Leslie and I, got on really well. And so we'd be sitting there giggling in the corner while Sheila Hancock was trying to work, poor thing. And Georgina Hale was very extraordinary. You know Georgina Hale, who was playing Daisy? Daisy Kay? Yeah. She's an extraordinary actress. You might have seen her in The Boyfriend, Ken Russell's film The Boyfriend. She was a very bizarre person. She's very well known in England for her performance in a play called Steaming in the West End. She was in that as well. But she speaks like that. She really does speak like that. You know, her voice is Daisy Kay. And I've seen her subsequently. The radio show I do at home. She came in for an interview just before I was due on to do my bit. And I said, Georgina, hi, do you remember Sophie Aldred? We worked together on Doctor Who. Oh, hello, darling. How are you? She said. So that was, she was an extraordinary person. Yes, and then I told you all about the poor old Candyman yesterday. I'm a bit of a shame, really. And I think it was just such a shame because there was such a lot of potential there. And that was one of those scenes where, you know, we hadn't really got it all worked out in rehearsals because we didn't know what the studio set was going to be like. I mean, it sort of works, I think, but it's not perfect.
Professor? That's me.
What? Gosh, that is. Goodness, what have you like this? Huh?
How come I'm hanging up here?
Well, it hasn't happened yet.
Well, it's 200 years ago.
I know, but you haven't done it. That's why you can't remember it.
Doesn't make sense.
To Louis Armstrong. But then, he really understood time.
Really?
Why? You're going to kill me anyway.
Only one more piece of gold.
Correct. So who'll be next? And who'll be lucky?
Flying turn. That was amazing. Silver Nemesis, yeah, as I was saying yesterday, we had, I think it was a 2 or 3 days rehearsal instead of a week. Because of the overrun on Greatest Show in the Galaxy. I wasn't at the read-through even. It's quite funny because, do you remember Dolores Gray, who was the American tourist? Well, there's a great story about her actually. But anyway, at the read-through, the assistant floor manager, Lynn Grant, played Ace. And so poor old Dolores got a bit confused, and then we got into rehearsals and started rehearsing, and she came over and she was asking me for to make her a cup of tea and coffee, and kind of talking to Lynn as though she was the character, because of course nobody had explained that actually I was the character and Lynn was the person who made the tea. But there's a great story about Dolores because she decided to to bring all her own costume and her jewels, and she was put up in this big hotel in London because I mean she was a mega film star, and it was pretty exciting to get her on the show. So the limo that she was actually filming in, we thought, well, it'd be a great idea if we got the limo and it could bring her down to the location in Sussex, which is about an hour or so's drive from London. So the limousine went to her hotel, picked her up, took her down to the hotel, and it was extraordinary actually because when she arrived, I was there when she actually arrived at the hotel, and she looked like this little old lady, and she sort of walked in, you know, like this, and she went into makeup, and it was strictly out of bounds makeup for about an hour and a half. And when she came out, it was incredible. She looked like, well, you know, she had, the makeup designer told me afterwards that there's a way you can do a sort of temporary facelift by, you use sticking plaster, and you pull the face like this and you just kind of stick it all back here. And so she'd done that, and she'd got a wig on and all sorts. Anyway, terrible problems had occurred because she'd left the bag with her rocks, as she called them, her diamonds, outside the hotel in London. She put the bag down on the pavement expecting that the driver would put them in the boot of the car, and he hadn't. So many frantic phone calls later, you can imagine, she was in a terrible state. They phoned the hotel, and thank goodness one of the porters from the hotel had noticed this bag on the pavement outside and had taken it in. So we sent a biker off to go and get the rocks. But in fact, what she was really worried about was not her rocks, because they were all insured anyway. You know, her sort of, you know, £250,000 worth of diamonds that she just carried around with her all the time. What she was really worried about was the bag also contained her set of corsets that she was wearing for the show to kind of, you know, lift and separate and do whatever they were meant to be doing. So that was Dolores. But yes, somebody was asking about the Cybermen yesterday, about the sequence on the gantry and how it doesn't seem to make sense. And I was explaining how, you know, time was of the essence again, and so and also, you know, that you have no control over what the director's going to shoot and then edit together. So I don't know whether it does make sense really, but there you go.
Paying good money for this muck is daylight robbery. So I have to finish it.
Every last bite.
Oh, that's like better. What did you do?
I'm the Doctor, and this is my friend Ace.
And I am Captain Cook, the eminent intergalactic explorer. You hadn't heard of me, old boy.
And I'm Mac.
Everything that was bright and good about what we had, they buried it, will never be found again.
It's your show all along, isn't it?
Aha. Gosh, it's great watching this actually, because I haven't watched them for ages, except for watching me eating that stuff, because it was very early in the morning. I think we started at about 8 o'clock in the morning to catch the daylight, and so we'd get into makeup about, you know, 7 o'clock in the morning and sit there, and then filming would start about 8 o'clock. And I hadn't had any breakfast, and I was looking forward to this nice fruit, because I thought, well, it's bound to be fruit. It'll be nice stuff that the props department have got for us. But oh no, that stuff we were actually eating was sweet corn and custard mixed up together. It was absolutely vile. There was no acting required. I mean, my stomach was heaving. It was really, really revolting. And I couldn't eat any of it. It was absolutely horrible. So that was that. And then, that last bit with, T.P. McKenna. Yeah, Sylvester and T.P. McKenna hit it off so brilliantly. I'm sure Sylvester got more Irish in Greatest Show in the Galaxy, because he has got Irish blood in him. And T.P. set it off in him, and they had a wonderful time together. And again, Jessica and I got on very well. We're still in touch with each other. Jessica's a very good singer. She does a lot of musicals in England. She's very well known as a musicals artist. She's got the most fantastic singing voice. She's brilliant. And then that last bit with Christopher Guard, in fact, he's Leslie Dunlop's ex-husband. There you go, very incestuous. And he was great to work with because he's a very talented actor. Sadly, he went off, he couldn't find much work, and he's now doing a lot of music with Mark Ayres, who writes a lot of the Doctor Who music. And he and Chris do quite a lot of stuff together, which is another connection. It's all connected.
One of these days we're going to have a nice long talk about acceptable safety standards.
Look back! I want to see everybody get back!
What are you doing in the lake? Drowning. Here you can be King of England. Is he dumb or what?
I'm not stupid. Why do you keep saying stupid things? That's good coming from a reject like you.
Listen here, Toadface, just you shut your mouth or I'll knock your teeth in!
I bet nobody likes you.
Shut up.
First chance he got, the Doctor went off without you.
Shut up! Shut up!
I bet even your parents hated your guts.
Shut up, you yellow stuntman!
Is that a spaceship? Sorry, Doctor, but I think I'm rather more expendable than you are.
Right, dear. Have something really delicious ready for us when we get home, okay?
That was another one of those great stories where we all got on so well. Again, Jimmy Ellis, Irish as they come, Sylvester and he had a great time, and they'd worked together before on a few dramas and things. It was Battlefield was another one of these ones where we all had to go home halfway through because there were strikes going on, and then we all had to get back. I mean, when I think about it, it's just incredible how any of this actually hit the screen. You know, the trouble we had with strikes and asbestos and time and money and, you know, all those things. It's unbelievable. Nick Courtney is just great though, isn't he? It was really lovely to work with Nick, and we see a lot of each other. I just love his humour is so brilliant, and he's a lovely man, really great. And he loved the fact that he'd retired, and you know, and he was coming back, and he thought it was great fun that he had this wife, and you know, the house was fantastic. It was a house just outside London, beautiful, sort of almost semi-stately home, and it had this big garden at the back, with room enough to land the helicopter, obviously. And Nick thought, yes, he'd rather like to he wished he actually did live in that house. Yeah, he was great to work with.
To talk to you!
Ace! What's the matter?
St. Matthew's in there says this house is going for a chase.
So?
Falling down last time I saw it in 1983. You tricked me! This is Perivale!
Well, I think congratulations are in order.
Congratulations. I felt it here in 100 years' time.
An evil older than time itself.
So I burnt the house down.
Any regrets?
Yes. Yes. I wish I'd blown it up instead.
Oh, I love doing that line. That corset was very uncomfortable, I can tell you. The dress that I was wearing was originally made for a series called The Aeneid Line, by Ken True, our costume designer, and who's another one who's sadly no longer with us. He designed that costume, and it had only been seen in a fleeting glimpse in The Aeneid Line. So he cracked it down because he thought, well, it would be a really good one for me to wear. But the trouble was, I've got quite broad shoulders for my size, and so they had to let out the shoulders quite a lot. And but even so, it was still agony. I'd been playing a lot of tennis that summer as well, and my biceps were quite big, and they had to kind of put some extra material in the arms. But I did have a genuine Victorian corset on underneath that Sarah, my dresser, Sarah was wonderful. She was with me throughout that whole season, and it was great because they're the sort of unsung heroes of dramas and things. The dressers and the makeup artists are the people who really keep you going through sort of when you're tired and you're fed up. And Sarah became a great friend of mine. Anyway, she actually had to sort of do the knee and the back routine with the old corset strings. Oh, it was agony. I couldn't actually. Sitting down was the worst thing. It was all right standing up, but sitting down, the whalebone kind of really dug in here. It was very uncomfortable. It's interesting to note that I'd learnt how to say Perivale by the end. Did you notice in Dragonfire I said Perivale? Yeah. And nobody kind of corrected it. And that's the one thing I get really hot under the collar about, is that people don't look out for that kind of thing. Because I'd never heard of Perivale, you see. It's a suburb of London that I'd never heard of, so I didn't know how to say it properly. If only somebody had told me. But there you go, it's one of those things.
Hey, Vicar.
Yes?
Shouldn't leave all this silverware lying around. You're wide open.
They're superstitious people in these parts. Too afraid of the old Viking curse to break in here.
Curse?
This church is built on old Viking graves. They say evil was once buried here.
Shut up. I said shut up.
I know what it is.
I am trying to work.
I know what the inscription means.
Yes, I already know. The chains of Fenwick shatter. I already know that.
No. It's a logic diagram.
What?
Look. This is a logic diagram for the flip-flop thingy, right? And this is a logic diagram for something else.
It's so complex.
That's because it's not for a small thing like this. It's for a computer.
Crane, take me to the deacon room.
And half-time score, Perivale 600 million, rest of the universe, nil. We can release Captain Soren to help us. I can distract the guard.
How?
Professor, I'm not a little girl.
Don't find the war.
Did you see me there, desperately trying to wipe my hair from my face so that you could actually see my face, that it was me? Yeah, I explained about that yesterday. It's such a shame. Sylvester's line, "Don't be frightened of the water," there is also another dub, because of course, I couldn't wear a radio mic, of course, because I was diving in the water, and it was just far too sort of blustery and windy for Sylvester to, so they added that later. There were very few kind of late additions. There were some lines we had to redo afterwards, but not that many. We added the dialogue, as I said yesterday, for the very final scene as well. I think it was it just my lines, or was it his as well? Because my teeth were chattering too hard. What else can I say? Yeah, Nicholas Parsons, the guy who played the vicar. That was very interesting because I knew him. He's a game show host in England. Yeah, that's right. And now from Norwich, seven of the week. Yes. So Nicholas Parsons was. It's like the Bonnie Langford thing. It's a bit of a sort of a joke in England, if you like. But it was just great with him because, of course, he was an actor before he was a game show host, and he took a real liking to me for some reason. It was really sweet, and ever since I've seen him, on various occasions, and he always speaks so enthusiastically of that time on Doctor Who. Even though, poor thing, I mean, it was a very tough shoot because we had this dreadful weather, as I was saying, and the mud was kind of caked around everything. In fact, in a lot of the shots we're wearing wellies, and you can sometimes see, I think there's a shot when we're going through the underground tunnel, and I'm wearing sort of short Wellingtons like this, just because there's no way we could go through in our shoes, because it was just like, we get mud up to here. So what they decided to do was we all wore wellies, and then the computer generated rocks on afterwards in front, so that you couldn't see that they were Wellington boots. So but you can probably still see them. Oh, and in fact, that was the day that when we were down in this underground tunnel, Sylvester, his wife, and two kids came down to come and see us on the shoot, and John Nathan Turner said, "Oh well, how would Joe and Sam like to be in Doctor Who?" And they found two little Hemavore costumes. It's great because I think they were about 10 and 12 at the time. And so the little Hemavores walking along are Sylvester's two sons. And they loved it. They had a great time. I've got some lovely photos of them dressed up as little tiny Hemavores. It's great.
I'm not a cat. I'm Kara. I'm your sister. No, you're not. Why do you keep calling me that?
You're like me.
Yeah.
You will be.
This is good. I like feeling like this.
Oh, those contact lenses were so uncomfortable. You can probably see I'd been had tears pouring down my cheeks. The contact lenses were interesting because, of course, a few of us were fitted for them. Oh, Dinsdale as well. I was going to tell you, and Curtis Fenrick, he had a few problems with his contact lenses, so we had to have a what do you call it? Optician, thank you, on site, who was also very nice, and he helped Dinsdale put his contacts in and take them out. And also Dinsdale insisted on having a hump for his character. It was his idea. He wanted the full works. He wanted the wheelchair, the hump, Anyway, yes, the contacts for me it was fine. I had no problems at the fittings. You know, inside I found it fine. And then as soon as we got down into the quarry, the sun was so bright. I mean, it was 100 degrees Fahrenheit most of the time in that quarry where we were filming. And so you can just imagine how it was for the poor people in the cat costumes. So the trouble was that, you know, the bright sunlight, and especially because, of course, when you're filming, it's like, you know, when you have a photo taken, the cameras have to be turned away from the sun and obviously towards you. So it's the same with film cameras. Obviously, they can't shoot into the sun. So, of course, you're always standing with the sun straight in your face on location, or, you know, pretty much straight in your face. And you know what that's like when and that was another difficult thing about survival, was to not squint, because the temptation was to do most of it like this. Which of course wouldn't have looked fantastic. Yeah. But I mean, poor old Lisa, who played Cara, was such a trooper. She never complained once about the heat. It was amazing, and not one single part of her body was exposed to the air. I mean, she had contact lenses, she had the teeth, and the rest of her was covered in that fun fur, and she had the gloves, and they had these sort of riding boots made of rubber. So I mean, it was just unbelievably hot. There was it's a shame about the cat people, because I don't know whether you know that the original design, it was a bit of a mix-up, because they wanted them to look quite sort of sinuous and to be dressed much more sort of in lycra and much more kind of sort of slinky. But unfortunately, there was another communication problem between the makeup and the costume department, who decided to share the duties of doing the cat people costumes, and this sort of these cuddly cats turned up, which was a bit of a shame.
Fair enough. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We're going pretty well for time, so look, we'll maybe throw it open for just a few more questions from the floor. I'm sure there must be still a couple of questions from those of you out in the audience. After this, we've got just a quick panel on Ace in retrospect. So I'll ask you guys, those people are going to get ready for that one now, those who are on that. And that'll be followed by the final autographing session. Then we wrap everything up. So look, okay, well, like I said, we'll go for 10-15 minutes. Has anyone got any last questions they want to ask? Over here, yes, Russell.
Okay. What actually made you get into acting in the first place?
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah, good way to earn a living. Well, I've always wanted to. Well, I've always performed in one capacity or another. When I was about 5, I used to put on shows in our garage, and I'd boss around all the local neighbourhood kids, and we'd make some money, and I'd give it to send it to Blue Peter actually for whatever appeal they were having at the time. And then at school I used to enjoy doing plays and stuff, and I used to sing and things like that. But I was quite, it was weird because I was quite shy on the one hand, but the performing was sort of the way that I wasn't shy really. And then gradually as I went through school I did more and more drama, and I really loved acting. And but I went to quite an academic school, and they kind of, I'm quite pleased in a way that I ended up going to university rather than to drama school, because I think I got to see a lot of people from all walks of life, whereas if I'd been to drama school I would have just mixed with people who wanted to be actors, and I think it gave me more of a kind of rounded view of life really. Yeah, and that's, by the time I went to university I decided that that's definitely what I wanted to do. But I don't know, I was a show-off, I suppose. That's what made me want to do it in the first place.
When you had to fight all back to the Dalek, were you given any instructions on who hit you?
Oh yeah, the poor guy inside, you can imagine, can't you, the force with which that came down. Like his ears were ringing afterwards. But the metal eye piece, actually that was quite painful, because I smacked it on the side, and we had exact directions as to where I should hit it. Yeah, they said, right, hit it here and here and here. And there was one a bit later on as well that I hit in a bit of the later sequence, and there was a pyrotechnic, and so I had to hit that on the right place for the pyrotechnic to fire off. But when I came to hit the eyepiece, of course, it's a metal baseball bat and a metal eye stick, and I went, dang, and it went all up my arms. It felt like a sort of cartoon, you know, like. You could see on the. Did you see that it was Tracy going through the window that time? Yeah, you can tell where she takes over. Yeah, so. But I really loved doing that. That was a great sequence. It was quite funny though, because I just finished doing that, and it takes quite a lot of adrenaline, and it was quite a big stunt to do. Although it doesn't look it, there was a lot of coordination that needed to go on with the visual effects of the test tubes breaking and the fire chutes going off and sort of the smoke and things like that. And so it was all very well choreographed. And when we finished, Tip, the stunt coordinator, came over and he said, no, just sit down here because you should get your adrenaline, it'll be pumping through you, so just sit down and get back to normal, because it was my first big stunt I'd ever done. So the director called for a tea break, and I was sitting there in the corner of the room, just sort of getting my breath back, and I was just sitting there on my own, and I heard this, come in, who's there? And excuse me, could somebody let me out, please? I'd like to go to and it was the poor guy inside the Dalek, and everyone had completely forgotten that he was inside, poor man.
Hey. Yeah, you said you watched Doctor Who for a bit before you actually went on the show. When you watched it, who was your favourite Doctor Who companion?
Oh, Sarah Jane Smith, without a doubt. It was great because I loved, and I've subsequently watched some videos and seen the old shows, and I mean they're so good. Even when you look back, I mean television does date very quickly, I think, but somehow I think especially the Pertwee era and some of the Tom Baker stories are just absolute real classics. I mean, I kind of look at them and I think, crikey, we never did anything as good as this, John Pertwee was the first Doctor who I remember watching, and I've got this theory that your favourite Doctor is usually the one who you first saw, who you first watched. So he was my favourite Doctor. Although then I remember the transition, the regeneration to Tom Baker. I remember my mum reading in the paper, she said, oh, Tom Baker's going to take over as Doctor Who. And I thought, what? What? But Doctor Who is John Pertwee. How dare he? I mean, everybody thinks the same, I think. I was around, I must have seen Patrick Troughton. I'm not sure whether we had a TV then though in our house at that time. But the only one I can remember at all, I've got a very bad long-term memory, the only one I can remember is The Green Death. And I just remembered those maggots on the hillside, and I was very frightened. And apparently I was really scared of Cybermen when I was a kid. And my mum would have to send me off to bed early. And so it's great, because I had a chance to get my own back on the Not many people have a chance to do that. No, Sarah Jane Smith, I thought, I suppose because I watched her so much. And I love Jo Grant for those outfits, the moon boots, and it's great. I love watching the old episodes. But it was great because when I met Liz for the first time, I was totally in awe of her. I remember we were I was at a Marvel Comics party, and I saw her across the other side of the room. It was really funny, and I thought, oh, I wonder if I could go and say hello to her, And it was really funny because I saw her, and she looked at me, and I looked at her. And she sort of came rushing towards me, and I came rushing towards her. And Sadie, her daughter, was a huge Ace fan, you see. So she came over and she said, oh, I really love what you're doing with the part of Ace. And I said, oh, I really loved you, Sarah Jane. It was a real sort of mutual adoration.
Just wondering, how did you win the role of Ace? How did it all start?
Oh yeah, well it was like one of those stories that you never quite believe happens, really. It's partly a credit to John Nathan Turner that he actually cast an unknown in the role of the Doctor and of Ace. He actually said a few weeks ago that he probably wouldn't be able to now because of the pressure of commercialisation of television. He'd have to cast well-known people. David Jason as the Doctor or something. I don't know. Elizabeth Hurley is the companion. Anyway, no, the first I knew about it, and I hadn't watched Doctor Who for a long time, because I explained yesterday I went away to university, we didn't have a TV and stuff, so I didn't even know it was still going. And I was in the back row of the chorus in a musical up in Manchester, Fiddler on the Roof, when my agent called one day and she said, "Oh, I've got an audition for you for 3 episodes of Doctor Who. They want somebody who looks young for their age and who can ride a motorbike." And I'm very lucky because I do look younger than I am, and I could ride a motorbike. So I went down to London thinking, oh, you know, fat chance. And I got the script. I remember sitting there in the reception and looking at the speech of Ace's, and it was actually, Ace was scrubbed out and it said Ray on it, actually. Ray from Delta of Bannerman, I guess. And I remember reading this script and I thought, oh, this is easy. I thought this would be great, you know. So, and I really, I went in there and I had to do a piece, because when you go in for an audition, they usually ask to see something that you've prepared. So I did a bit from a play called Daisy Pulls It Off, which I later went on to do, actually, to play the role of Daisy a few years later. And I met Chris Clough, the director, and I remember sitting with him and talking about children's theatre and the state of children's theatre in Britain, and having a very serious discussion with him about politics and things. And then I suddenly remembered that I was actually meant to be coming over as a 16-year-old, and I thought, oh no, I've really blown it now. And I'd gone down, I was wearing a dress and a little hat, you know, in an attempt to look as young as possible. Anyway, to my great surprise, I got a recall. Went down to London again on the train, and this time met John Nathan Turner. And it was great, because I walked into his office, and I'd expected him to just be in a sort of corporate office, you know, with his desk and his swivel chair. And his office was just filled with Doctor Who memorabilia, and he had Dalek curtains, as far as I can a bright red carpet, and he had a cabinet in the corner, this amazing glass-fronted cabinet just full of memorabilia, including the famous nylon Tom Baker underpants, and all sorts of models and figures, and you know, all sorts of bits and pieces. So I was fascinated, and Chris Clough said, you know, this is Sophie Aldred, you know, she has her own leathers, he said. Her agent wrote on the back of her publicity photo. And I remember I was quite nervous, you know, meeting John, and I read the speech again, and John said, could you do it again, only this time? And he gave me a few notes, and I reread the speech. And that was it, and he said, right, thank you very much. And I was in there about 10 minutes, and I thought, oh, great, you know, got on the train, went back to Manchester, and I just forgot about it, really, because you do lots of auditions, and you just like think, oh well, you know, sometimes you never hear from people half the time. They don't ring up and say you haven't got the job. They only really ring you up when they have got the job. Anyway, my agent said, well, look, ring me on this certain date, and because I didn't have a phone in the flat where I was staying. And one night I got to the theatre, and there was a message for me on the board, and it said, ring me now! And this is about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and it was now, you know, sort of 7 o'clock in the evening. And she'd given me her home phone number as well, my agent. And so halfway through the show, I kind of went downstairs, and I got into the phone booth. We had this little phone booth backstage, and I rang my agent. And I said, oh, what's happened? She said, you've got the part in Doctor Who. And she sounded ever so cross. She said, I'm having my tea, I'll ring you back. And I sort of put the phone down and thought, I've got the part in Doctor Who. She's having my tea. And I waited for her to ring back. She said, oh, sorry, I was a bit annoyed. She said, I've just been so excited all day. I've been trying to ring you all day. And you know, she said, they've given you the part in Doctor Who. And I was like, what? And I hadn't even had a screen test or gone in front of a camera or anything. And she said, and it's more complicated than that, she said, because they think that Bonnie Langford might be leaving the series as the new Doctor Who assistant, and they asked if you'd like to take over if she'd leave, and I was going, what? And so I put the phone down, and I opened the little glass door to the phone booth, and the first person who I saw when I came out of the phone booth was the guy who was playing our rabbi in our production of Fiddler on the Roof, called John Scott Martin, who just so happened to be a Dalek, and he'd been ribbed mercilessly, for, you know, because somebody had found out that he used to be a Dalek, and so he knew that And it was great because he pulled out of his costume, his rabbi costume, he pulled this Dalek postcard, and he said, "I knew you were going to get the part." He said, and he handed it to me, and it said, "Welcome to the family." I've still got it. It says, "Welcome to the family. You will not be exterminated."
A couple of days ago, or yesterday actually, you said that you're talking about time and comparing time that you've had to do scenes for days with Doctor Who compared to normal dramas that you see. Why did Doctor Who get so much more time than the other one?
The time question was all money. Sadly, you know, it's budget. That's what it all comes down to money. And John was trying to controlling the purse strings, and it really is amazing when you find out. Mike Tucker told me actually that because he works on Red Dwarf as well, Mike, who was in the visual effects department and who worked on all the Doctor Who's I worked on, or most of them anyway. Now Mike told me that Red Dwarf is actually done by an independent production company rather than by the BBC. The BBC commissions the company to make the show for them. And the budget for one episode of Red Dwarf of visual effects is the equivalent to the whole series, the whole year budget for Doctor Who. So you can just see what what was going on really, and why we were having to. I think it's always been a problem with Doctor Who that there's been very little cash flying around, and so it's always been done on a shoestring. And it's sad really, because in a way, if the producers weren't so good and actually managed to do this impossible thing and get their show in under budget, then perhaps they'd be given a bit more money. But it's a real chicken and egg thing, because if the producer can't make it for that money, then they'll just cancel the show. So the BBC sort of had them over a barrel really all the way through.
I was just wondering what's next and what are you going to do in the future?
What's next? Yes, I've had quite a strange time actually in the last couple of years, because last year, every time the phone rang, it was a job for me, and it was so funny. My agent would ring me up and just say, "Sophie?" And I'd go, "Yes." He said, and he'd just laugh. And I said, "Oh, another job?" He said, "Yep." And it was just amazing. I worked absolutely solidly, which meant that by about March, no, it was about February, March, I was absolutely exhausted because I'd been solid. This time last year I was doing a Saturday morning show, which meant rehearsing all day Friday, which it's sort of like from early in the morning until late at night, getting up at 5 o'clock the next morning, rehearsing again, doing a live show for an hour and a half, which takes up a lot of energy and a lot of adrenaline to be doing a live show to the nation. It's very nerve-wracking. And then the rest of the week I'd be working on Words and Pictures, plus all the other jobs that would come along. I think I worked out one week I worked on six different jobs, 6 different things. So it was quite a relief really to get to February and things started winding down a bit. And then I started thinking, I suppose I better organise the wedding really. and that took an amazing amount of organisation, as anyone who's had to organise such a thing will vouch say. That was in July. And then really since that I decided that it was time I started doing more radio. I got very interested in radio, so I wrote a very cheeky letter to some radio companies and said, "Give me a job really. It's about time I did some radio." And one station, which is called LBC, it's a London station, very well known station in London, wrote back and said, "All right then, have a job." So, to my great surprise. So I'm film reviewing for them, which is quite fun because I get to go see all the previews. And they have these lovely little preview theatres in Soho in London, which is very comfy. You get in and you get wined and dined, so they give you drinks and sandwiches and things because they want you to write nice things about the film. And nice comfy chairs. I find it quite hard to go to a normal cinema anymore. Got spoiled. And so I'm doing that. And what else am I doing? I'm doing sort of little bits and pieces really. I've got nothing great, nothing big planned. I've just set in motion a few things just before I came out, and I hope when I get back they'll have come to fruition. There's a company that wants to use me for a big thing for UNICEF, a children's program, and they want to do a thing called a life swap, which is where I would go filming in different countries and see how children were living, and they would come to our country. So I think that's how it would work. It's all in development at the moment, so that would be great fun because I'd like to do that. And there's also some adult presenting perhaps on the horizon, but I'm just beginning to move away from children's presenting and into adult presenting, which is always a bit of a jump, because people tend to typecast you as a children's presenter, so they don't want to use you for adult presenting. But I'm getting there. And also we've been away a lot as well. We've had a sort of extended honeymoon for the last few months.
Is there a question right at the back there?
Yeah, sorry. I was wondering, did you have fun with the PBS camera crew who were doing the making of Silver Nemesis? You were mugging at the camera.
Yeah.
Or were they a nuisance?
No, they were great actually. Eric has since become a good friend of mine and Sylvester's actually. I've been to stay at his house in America. No, they were great. They were very unobtrusive, and it's quite nice to have that actually in retrospect. It's lovely to have that documentary to remember what it was all like. No, they were never obtrusive, and always very sweet and nice people. It was a good experience. I'm glad they did it.
Yeah. In Silver Nemesis, you were up on a walkway balcony. Was that real or?
Yeah. I was talking about it a bit earlier. It was actually.
Slingshot in
yeah.
there.
Yeah.
Was that dangerous or?
It was dangerous, yes. But we didn't really have time to sort of to really realise how dangerous it was. That was the big thing again about Doctor Who, is that, you know, if you think this is dangerous, well, wait a couple of minutes and we'll have moved on to something completely different by then. So.
One final thing, if you got another chance to come back to Australia, would you possibly be able to persuade Sylvester and yourself? Would you like another return visit?
Oh well, no, I don't really like Australia. And I mean, Sylvester, you know, he gets sick of being asked to around the world to do things, you know, free holidays, and no, I don't think he'd be interested. Oh, the funniest thing that happened in Shakedown. I don't think there's anything funny about making Shakedown at all, as far as I can remember. The nicest thing about it was the moment we finished. No, I mustn't slag it off too much. I mean, Kevin knows I think this as well, and Kevin was having such a, I'm amazed the man didn't have a nervous breakdown and 3 heart attacks doing it. No, I think it was funny when you were doing that. Which is the character who you're impersonating, doing with Pass the Parcel?
Oh,
he died a glorious
death!
He died a glorious death!
That's your party, Alice.
So I sent the trooper.
I think that was probably the funniest. But it was so hard because, of course, bless them, you know, nobody was really being paid anything, and it was mainly an amateur production, and we were doing it for a bit of a laugh, we hoped. Unfortunately, it turned out not to be. But so it was great because it gave some people who wanted to try their hands at acting a bit of a chance, you know.
The 2 guys playing the Sontarans actually originally were reverse roles, weren't they?
That's
right,
right, yeah.
Part C.
Yeah. I can't remember why.
That's a bit scary.
I think that's the reason why.
Fair enough. All right, well, we might wrap that there unless there are any more last-minute questions.
Alright, oh, okay, yep.
Have you already gone through what was the problem with Shakedown, or because I wasn't here yesterday, so we already discussed.
Who wasn't here yesterday when I was talking about Shakedown? Oh right, well I'll just briefly tell you that the big problem was the director, Kevin Davis. Kevin Davis was not very good at delegating, as he will be the first to admit, although I think he's a fabulous director, and I'm really pleased that he's getting more and more work now in Britain. And I was saying yesterday that he's made this fabulous video, which I hope you get over here, called The Few Doctors, which was shown at Panopticon this year, which is Doctor Who meets Benny Hill. It's a screamer. It's really, really funny. No, Shakedown was something that Kevin really, really wanted to do. He didn't have enough pre-production time, because what had happened was, you know, Downtime that Keith Barnfather did? Well, Downtime was scheduled to be done at that time, and then Keith had some other work that came up and he couldn't do it. So the production company rang up Kevin and said, can you get Shakedown done in the time, in this time? And of course there were only a few weeks, there was far too little pre-production time, but Kevin, because he was so desperate to get this done, and he thought he might never get another chance, said, yes, 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 we can do it. So part of the problem was that they didn't have enough pre-production time. So when we actually came to making it, the schedule was non-existent, and we just spent these days like sitting around waiting and waiting and waiting for something to happen, and everything was like took too long to do, and nobody had thought of certain things, and it was just a bit of a nightmare from start to finish. But what I was saying yesterday was that I think the end product is mostly fantastic. I think the visuals are stunning, and I can't believe that was the outcome. We only had one camera as well, which is incredible. The cameraman was just amazing. So in the end, it worked out all right.
Okay. One last, yep.
I may have said this already, and it may have been better earlier on in the mention, but it's really chance of hearing a bit of your singing voice.
Oh no! What, my proper singing voice? The trouble is, I was thinking about this. What can I sing you? Okay, I'll sing you something. Now this is, it's sort of unaccompanied song.
It's about 10.
And it's something that, it's a little song that my father used to sing to me, and his mother used to sing to him before that. He used to sing this to me in the bath many, many years ago. Let's see if I can remember it. Out on a seat one day, a little girl sat knitting. There eating bread and jam, a boy was also sitting. He sat and munched away, and never thought she'd spied him, till with a longing sigh, she came and sat beside him. Then taking up his sticky hand, he bent her fluffy head, and roguish eyes, to his surprise, smiled at him as she said, "Dear little jammy face, I love you so. I wish I were your sweetheart or your mammy. Just what the reason is, I do not know, unless it is because your face is jammy. Please won't you share with me a slice of what you're eating? I do love bread and jam," the maiden kept repeating. "I'm sorry, little girl," the boy said softly, sighing. "All of it's gone, I fear," then saw that she was crying. "Don't cry," he whispered, "and perhaps I will let you kiss me twice." The little maiden dried her eyes and said, "That will be nice. Dear little jammy face, I love you so. I wish I were your sweetheart or your mammy. Just what the reason is, I do not know, unless it is because your face is jammy."
absolutely impossible to top. So I think that's probably where we'll call it close to the Q&As for the weekend. Okay, the next panel, the panelists have suddenly decided they're not really interested in doing it anymore.
He's not. I thought you were good. What happened, man?
Well, 2 laps, you know, I was a bit tired, and then by the 5th I sort of picked it up. It wasn't too bad.
What do you mean laps?
Well, you've got to do 5 laps.
It's got speed, it's got danger, it's got attitude. It's got to be snowboarding. Far northeast, a star was born. Well, actually, 2 stars. Beginning on television and then reaching pop maturity, they're here today at the Rock Circus in London to have their hands cast so they can join the ranks of the immortals like Thingio. So what's it like being young, talented, rich and single? Well, enough about myself. I asked the same question to Ant and Dec, better known as PJ Duncan. Oh, this is the life. As you can see, wonderful seats, marvellous food, fantastic champagne, my own television set, my own stick bag, first class of course. And if one wishes to fly across the Atlantic, this would cost you £2,094 one way. So I'm going to enjoy it. Rick, could you go and see the rest of the plane? Okay, come on. Thank you very much. Welcome to the warm welcome to the warm and wonderful world of Scotland. For my weekly foray into all things football in north of the border. Now this week it's a very special Scots corner because we've actually got Scottish fans on the show. I'm going to ask them questions. I'm going to talk very slowly so they understand me. Do you expect Rangers? Did you expect Rangers going to walk the title? That's a stupid question, isn't it? Well, I suppose part of the course was to do really, but... There you go. Right, second question. Now, people take the mick out of Scotland, but